Welcome to the Fresh and Fired Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Marshall, here to help you function at your best in health and fitness and life with my amazing co-host, the wild, wonderful Haley Pindle, online fitness and nutrition coach, who has graced us with her presence here today. Let's get fired up.
Time is money, people. We're spending it here with you.
Yes, we are. This is very exciting. And I wanted to, right out of the gates, tell you about my dream. I was going to start telling you before we hit record, but then we were like, oh, our listeners, you guys, you're going to want to hear this. No, it was one of those dreams where I was like, I don't understand what's happening. So my husband bought me one of those little like clip mics. What's the proper term for those?
I don't know. A microphone? Is
like
this
a
in
wireless
your dream or
mic.
is this in the real world?
No, real world. He
Okay.
bought me so let me just clarify. Real world, he bought me one of those mics that like clips on that like Bluetooth to your phone or your camera or whatever you're using. And so he was just showing me like, this is how it works. I haven't even used it yet, but I will. I promise myself.
Content upgrading.
I'm upgrading. Okay, so here's the deal. He shows me this. Anyways, then I have this dream that I have that mic on for our podcast. And I think that I'm just like, we're talking and we're going through the podcast, but I'm just walking around more like it's a phone call, like as if I'm not, we usually like sit here in front of our screens and we're like, okay, we're just going to talk. I'm walking around and I'm just like, we're having a great conversation. But then afterwards, I was like so annoyed because the mic wasn't on. And because I wasn't sitting in front of this mic, our whole podcast is like you talking. And then it's like this muffled, whispery, like low tone of my voice because I'm just like off wandering around.
That's actually happened before, hasn't it? Like when we've cut out halfway through or like at the end of our podcast where it's literally just you talking.
Yes, because it cut out, but that was because they weren't. So if you're starting a podcast, make sure you upload it properly. You got to wait till it finishes the full upload before you close the platform. So yes, that has happened, but not for the reason of me just like walking around hand talking, thinking that I have a mic on. Isn't that so random?
That's funny, but it's actually kind of like realistic. I thought you were going to talk about unicorns and things.
No, it wasn't even like, that's what I mean. It felt like a real dream, but I just woke up being like, well, that was dumb. Why did you do that, Em? And then here we are now doing our podcast.
Oh my gosh. I love those hyper realistic dreams where you wake up and you're like so disoriented. It's like, whoa, did that actually happen? No, it didn't. It's a new day, a new life.
Exactly. I was like, oh, we already did our podcast today. Nope. Here we are. This is the real thing. Stand in front of the mic. So
is it real though?
Or I don't know. Now I'm just totally confused. Oh, you're funny. Okay. Do you have any updates for me? I want to know.
Do I have any updates? I didn't dream last night. My fun little vacation is coming up soon.
When?
2 weeks, June 6th. I still don't know where we're going. For those two, he's been super like, I'm planning this whole thing and you don't get to know anything until we get there. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, are you going to abduct me? For those listening, I'm waiting for my rang. So for my
rang.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So that's coming so soon. And I'm like looking at my calendar every day. I'm like, one more day.
Oh my gosh. This is so exciting. I can't wait to hear all of it.
I am so excited. I'm just going to text you a picture of my hand.
Please.
And that's
it. Please do. That would just be.
That's my exciting life.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to that and I'm super pumped for you.
Me too.
And I love that you guys have had so much communication around your goals. Like, okay, what a way to start your relationship on this foundation of actually communicating. What are your goals? What are your values? Being fully open and transparent, being vulnerable with like what you're both hoping for, with timelines, with all of these things. And I feel like this is such a good life lesson because I am a firm believer in, we talk a lot about all things health, right? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. I think that communication is a keystone underpinning. Like when we talk about exercise being a keystone habit for success, which it is, there's lots of other keystone habits. One huge key to your overall health and your relationship health, which affects your mood and your body and your stress levels and all of that. Communication is key.
Yes. Yes, and I can speak to that too. Like so many of my clients who go through like marriage kind of, turbulence,
Yes.
like you don't show up the same way because it's constantly on your mind and it just like overtakes your mind. That's all you're thinking about. And like same for your job. Like you go to your job thinking, like I'm going to have to go home and it's such a, unsteady, uneasy kind of feeling at home.
Well,
So
yeah, and it
exhausting.
it doesn't feel you don't feel, especially as for a woman,
Yeah.
you want to feel safety and security, and you want to know that you can be yourself at
Mhm.
home in your space. And so much of that has to do with how you communicate with the other people in your home, right? Depending on what phase of life you're at. But
Yeah.
if you are married, you have a spouse, if you also have kids, then now tying into it, if you have teenagers, that can be a whole other deal with how you communicate with your teenagers as they're finding their way in life. So I feel like there's so much effort that we can put into this, and this is something I'm super passionate about. And where this is funny because you might be like, aren't you like a chiropractor? Shouldn't you be more?
I like to communicate with my patients.
Well, here's the thing: if you don't communicate what's going on with them when they're coming to you, is like, okay, what is the problem that they're having? How are you proposing that we solve this problem? What are the solutions that we can offer? Are you communicating to them the risks, the benefits, their alternatives to care? People appreciate that, and it needs to be communicated in a way that's not completely over their head, but then
Mhm.
is not also condescending. There's so much to it. And even just the way you show up with your physical presence. Like I had a patient one time and or no, sorry, it was John's It's so funny we talk about all the different patients that come in and
It's
out. This
pretty
is
much
actually
yours
John's
too.
story. Yeah. Like we we whoever's there, the doc that's on duty is like taking care of any patient that's coming in. So it's not like his patients and my
Yeah.
patients. It's like whoever's coming into the clinic. But this is actually his story, and this patient came in and he's telling them, okay, this is what he thinks is going on, and they're in the room and the patient is just like, thank you so much for taking the time to explain this to me. And then the patient shared that, oh, like, this was so much better. I just had this experience at the hospital, and this is not like knocking any
Yeah.
one doc, but they were like, the doctor smelled so bad that I couldn't even hear. No, seriously, that I couldn't even like listen to what they were saying, and I just wanted to get out of the room. I know that's not directly communication, but even something that distracts, like if you're not taking care of your hygiene, the person, they're not listening at all to what
Yeah.
you're saying because they're so distracted by the fact that you smell bad. Like it's a random.
It's just so funny. The story is hilarious because you're like, I'm imagining being this person in the seat and like trying to take this doctor. He's gone through years and years of medical school, very smart person. And you're like, gosh, man, you can't even take a shower. Like,
Take a shower. So, like, in other words, it's like, think about your physical environment when you're communicating, like how you show up, right?
yeah.
It's distress. So, number one, is there stuff that's distracting, like your body odor and your, like, did you brush your teeth? Think about when you talk to someone. This is like hard truth here, people. When you're talking to someone and there's like so much scuzz on their teeth, you're distracted. You're not listening to what they're saying because you're staring at their mouth and you're like, oh, dude, brush your teeth. Is that not true?
It's so true. Okay, I have a story about this to just solidify what you're saying right now. So my family went to a little street fair last summer and my mom and I were like we saw a little, psychic stand. We're like, "You know what? Let's go see what
Oh, no.
happens."
Okay, okay.
Nothing came true, by the way.
Oh,
Absolutely
good.
nothing. Anyways, this this woman who was doing the psychic kind of like reading, there was plaque like everywhere on her bottom teeth, and that's all I don't even remember what she said. I was just like looking at it and like how could you look in the mirror and not notice all of that? Uh, uh,
I know. It's like basic stuff. So, number one, minimize distractions in your communication.
yeah.
It's going to just help your relationships. Okay. That's an easy, like easy basics. Number two, there are three components of communication. 55% of your communication comes through body language.
Mhm.
55%. That's huge. So that's like facial expression, gestures, posture, eye contact, and then any other nonverbal cue that you're giving. So if you're showing a lack of confidence in an area, this is hugely applicable in your workplace, because if you pick up the phone or you're face to face with a customer, if you're in a customer service position, or like the example we used is if I'm as a chiropractor talking to a patient, if I show a lack of confidence and uncertainty, or my sentences and my body language, it sounds like I'm asking a question at the end instead of giving them the facts in a way that's very like, this is what's going on, and instilling confidence in them. I do that like a ton through my body language and my facial expression. And this is very interesting because you can get better at this by just looking in the mirror, talking in the mirror, or having role play. The videos help a lot with this. And there's still times like you don't want to pick yourself apart so much that you can't just be yourself. Because, you know, we can watch back through our videos and be like, what was I doing? I was like biting my lip or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we all have little ticks. And that's not what I'm talking about. We talk a lot about you don't need to be perfect. But the first step is awareness. So 55% of what you're saying is coming through your body language. 38% is coming through your tone of voice. So it's not, I always say this is like, not what you're saying, it's how you say it. You've heard that before.
Yeah. Like
how you say it, how you say the words. So this is pitch, speed, rhythm, volume. This is huge for phone etiquette. Like when I can't tell you the number of employees we end up having that we're hiring at the clinic. The phone is so intimidating when we're doing phone training, is like, this is the first experience when a person calls into the clinic. This is the first experience that they're having, right? The person answering the phone. So just even training someone on the phone, like the pitch of their voice, the speed of their voice. If you're talking too fast and you're slurring all your words together, the person's not able to understand you. If the rhythm of it is too slow, you're going to be like, okay, I want to finish this person's sentence.
That's also very distracting. I have a very big pet peeve when people are super slow when they're speaking. And like
today on Haley's pet peeves.
Continue, like continue, like get to the point.
Yes. But that being said, I understand that if you ask a person a question, people have different processing speeds. So also if you're asking a question, it's good to pause and give that person a chance to assimilate or process your question. So that's the power of the pause, where you're like, I'm just going to pause for longer than I think to allow this person to answer. That's a big lesson that I've had where, you know, I like to talk fast and move, and we both do it where we almost like cut in on each other, and it's like, it's fine because we're both like that. But there are people who find that distracting as well, or they almost get annoyed by you doing that. So not always jumping over what they're going to say because they need a little bit more time. So yeah, there's a lot of nuances, but so we have 55% body language, 38% tone of voice, and then 7% are the words that you say. So the actual words you use to express the message. And I find this so fascinating because having done speaking engagements where I'm speaking on a stage to a large crowd, and you really don't have to have it word for word perfect. You hear it all the time, guys, with us on the podcast. We'll stumble over a word, or I'll use the wrong word and then laugh it off and like say the right one after. And most of the time, if you're listening to this, I mean, there might be the odd person who's really picky, who's like, get it together. I don't know. We've never had any comments on that. But I think for the most part, people realize the actual words are less important in a sense than how you've said it.
Yeah.
And the body language that you've portrayed it with. Now, that being said, if you're in this like intense political, theological debate, like something that's like really hot, you know, or even like in the field of psychology, see, I can't even say it. In the field of like psychology or sociology, and you're having like some sort of PhD debate, well then yes, they get really picky about the words they use because there's like very specific terminology that can mean very different things. And you need to be able to define that and defend it and all of that. But we're not talking about like a formal debate scenario here. We're talking about communication with the goal of connection.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's the connections that you make that form those healthy relationships that help your overall health as well as the overall health of your family and your workplace. And we all know anyone who's been or worked in a toxic work environment knows how key communication is, because it can just destroy your professional life if you have a toxic work environment. And too many people stay in those environments for far too long, and it destroys their health. I can't tell you the number of patients that have been at the clinic that have had these like chronic, horrible issues, aches, pains, tension in their neck, back, chronic headaches, whatever, insert symptom. And they have it for like 20 years and they're never getting better. And then they quit their job, they find a new job, or they retire, and it all goes away.
Yep. It's so underrated, and you spend so much time in this workplace. Like, you have to just realize the majority of your day is here, and if it's constantly like you're constantly in fight or flight, or you have like anxiety going into work or going to your workplace, like that's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in terms of like, I've heard before, public speaking is more feared than death.
Yeah.
So, if someone like was coming from ground zero, like they didn't have any experience with tone of voice, tonality, and like conviction in their voice, like where would you say someone should start in like the learning process of starting to communicate better with either their boss or their relationships or their spouse?
Yeah, that's huge. Well, one thing that I learned from a mentor years ago that helped me tons is enter every scenario with a beginner's mind. This sounds really basic. What's a beginner's mind? It's when you enter every situation with a level of enthusiasm and genuine curiosity. If you have anxiety about having conversations, be the one who's curious, because the person who asks the questions is the one who's in command of the conversation. You're going to notice it now and next time that you're in a conversation. If you always feel like you're floundering, needing to like come up with an answer, it provokes more anxiety. So let's say, it's funny because some people are like, the biggest questions, like they just ask so many questions. You're like, dude, I can't even ask you a question because you just asked me questions, right? But a way that you can do this is something called the AAA bond. So this doesn't directly relate to public speaking. We'll get to that. But let's just start with overcoming the anxiety of striking up a conversation or feeling more comfortable in your work environment speaking with your boss or another employee that maybe you don't connect super easily with. It's the art of asking questions. So something you can do is the AAA bond. Now, what that stands for is you want to acknowledge the person, you want to ask them a question, then you want to pause, listen, and answer. So before that sounds overwhelming, let's just take a step back. So first of all, beginner's mind. You're coming in with feeling like you have a level of energy and enthusiasm. People love that. If you bring like an assertive, positive energy, and you don't even need to be, if you're not like a super cheery, bubbly person, that's okay. Be yourself. But know that when you put a bit of expression on your face, when you smile, when you allow your body to move and be a little bit more fluid and not just like rigid and like, I don't make any expression, you're going to instantly be more inviting and allow the person to feel more comfortable. Okay. So that's huge. Making eye contact, smiling, having an open body language, facing the person. If it's woman to woman, usually like in a direct sense and making it feel inclusive. If it's a man and a man, or even a woman and a man, you might want to stand at an angle. And typically with that, you want to be like, because what it does is it doesn't feel as intimidating. So it kind of depends on who you're talking to. But there's so much to the art of communication, right? But those are ways that you can portray with your body language that you're open and you're curious and you have this like beginner's mind. Then when you add in the AAA bond, which is this person says something to you, they ask you a question, you start to feel that anxiety rising or the tension in your body because you're like, oh, I'm not good at this. I don't like conversations. I don't like public settings. There's a lot of people around, right? Then what you're going to do is just going to take a breath and acknowledge what they said. So let's do an example. Ask me a question, Haley.
Okay, because I had a follow-up question to this. How do you and John deal with conflict?
Haley, that's a really good question. I just acknowledged you. I just acknowledge your question. Or I could be like, oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. We have had a lot of years of learning Okay, there, I just acknowledged your question. And now, if I don't have a good answer in my mind or I'm feeling a little bit of that anxiety, I go right to ask you a question back. It's like, oh, that's a good question. That's a tough one. Is there a reason you're asking? I'm just curious. So there,
Yeah.
I'm expressing my genuine curiosity back.
Okay. My answer to that is, oh, me and Justin are having some turmoil and I don't know how to deal with it.
Ah, that makes sense. And now if I still don't have an answer, I can be like, okay, well, like, how long have you guys been together again?
2 years.
Okay, right on. And so that's interesting. Do you find like when you're having issues, it's more at a certain time of day, or is it go like in waves, or is it all the time?
Yeah, it definitely goes in waves when both of us are stressed at work and we kind of bring it home and then it just starts the ball starts rolling.
Right. So both of you are PMSing at the same time.
Exactly. His is much worse than mine.
Right. I totally get that. Okay. Do you see how many times I've acknowledged you? And then I'm like gathering information right now.
Yeah. Do you
And I'm
ever
doing,
end up answering the question
I
or?
will. Yes, I
Oh.
will. I'm just using this as an example. Like, I'm using this as an example. If you're feeling anxious, this is how you buy yourself time in a conversation, and you allow yourself to relax, because the conversation is back and forth, rather than me just like feeling like I need to over verbalize and spew out information and like overtake you, or the opposite of that, because that'd be more of an extroverted personality that would tend towards self promotion or over verbalizing, which doesn't feel good on the other end. Or the opposite, where you're very introverted and you just trend towards one word answers, even though you might still have a desire to connect more deeply, you just don't know how, and you have a lot of anxiety about it. So you would have asked me that question, and I could have just said something like, yeah, it's just taken a long time and we still have issues. Like, there, the conversation just ended. Like, unless you're going to ask me another question. Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah.
this is how you kind of open up this dialogue. You want it to be, I think about conversations like a dance. Like, they're like back and forth, and it's this
Yeah.
beautiful exchange of both information and then again that ultimate goal of connecting more deeply with people. Because there's the odd person that probably likes surface level conversation. How's the weather? Whatever. Like, I'm glad it's sunny out today. You do that when you are rushed, maybe, or you have a lot of other things going on. You might do that on purpose if you don't have a lot of time to talk. That's okay. But for the most part, people have an innate desire to be more deeply connected. So even with the question you asked, in how John and I communicate more deeply in order to not have as much conflict, well, a lot of that comes through listening. So after you ask the question, it's been a lot of learning and listening to each other better. So for example, us going through issues where we didn't quit on each other helped with that a lot. Anytime you go through immense struggle, if you come out on the other side of it, you have a deeper understanding of that person. If you People are inherently fascinating. The more you get to know them, the more you will be able to experience the richness of the depth of their personality, especially if it's the person that you love the most deeply in the world. You need to come at them, not come at them.
With
You need to keep this angle or mindset that allows you to always be dating them in a sense,
Mhm.
right? Where you're always getting to know them better. So when I look back for John and I, most of the time when we have had our worst conflict has been, we've both been in more in our own egotistical state, our own agenda, where, well, I've got all these things going on and he's got all these things going on, and my things take precedent to your things. And we're literally, it's like we're living in the same house. It's more like living with a roommate, right? Where you're like, I just come and go, and we minimally communicate. We don't really know what's going on each other's calendars, and whatever's going on for me is more important than you, and it's the same thing on the other side. And then this is where you end up butting heads, because you're like, yeah, but I had all these things going on. Yeah, but I'm so stressed out. Yeah, but I'm the one who's not feeling great right now. I'm the one who didn't sleep last night. And it's the same thing on the other end. I work all hard all day just to come home to, a mess and like a stressed out wife, right? So it can go either way. So a lot of it comes from being inherently selfish, learning to actually love someone for who they are and want what's best for them, want to connect with them, want to get to know them more, and then use the tools to communicate that. So these are simple tools, like we already said, knowing and being honest with yourself about how you're communicating to that person. In this case, you asked me the question with John and I. So I had to get really honest with myself of how I was communicating with him. I spent a lot of years thinking that he was the problem. He was the one who was not taking enough initiative. He was the one who couldn't get his crap together. He was the one who I could keep going on stories that I could allow myself to ruminate on that led to worse fights, that led to a lack of progress, both in our businesses and in our home life. And it wasn't until a huge switch happened for me in my brain, which was, why am I not being more empowering to this man? I love him the most, yet I rag on him the most. And I pick out his flaws. I'm negative and critical. He gets the worst of me at the end of the day. I would pour all my heart and soul and compassion out into every patient that I saw at the clinic, to friends, even once we had kids, to our kids. And if you look at our team and our culture in our clinic, it's amazing. I would role play with them on communication, on like the best customers. We've had like best customer service awards and all of that stuff. I'm extremely empowering to our employees, and I'm extremely empowering to the kids I coach, because I'm like, I see the potential in you. I love you. You're awesome. Sure, I might have some feedback for you, but I'm going to give you a bunch of positive reinforcement in between there. I was not doing that with my husband, the man who I like love the most, right? Yeah. And so I had this flip in my brain that was like, oh my goodness, I need to be empowering. And so when I switched that and then started actually using these same communication principles, the empowering positive reinforcement, being honest with myself about my own mindset, my own body language, my own tone of voice, my own words that I'm choosing, that shifted everything.
Yeah. Why do you think people like end up with that? Because like it's such a good point that you made. Like you pour into everyone else during the day, and then I feel like this is true for so many people listening, by the way, which is why I'm bringing it up. And then by the end of the day, your favorite person in the world, the one you married, the one you chose, is like getting the worst of it. Like, why do you think that we lash out on our significant others? It's just because like they're there and it's convenient, or like what do you think the root cause of that is?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think there's like multiple angles you can take that question. One is, what were you modeled growing up? And sometimes we were modeled things, and that you just get that behavioral pattern gets passed on. And we all have those, right? We all have, it might not be big T trauma. For some people, it would be. And for some of us, it's more like little T traumas, where you're like, I'm not saying they're lesser than, but they kind of add up, and they're just these like ingrained behavioral patterns that are toxic or not helpful. And so that's one thing. And I think a huge step for that is first becoming aware of it, being really brutally honest with yourself, and taking ownership for how you actually act. So like when you do behavioral analysis testing or you do personality tests, it's so hilarious to me. I can't tell you the number of people at these conferences and like, personal and professional leadership development type conferences. I've been to so many of them in the course of the last decade, that people, when they get one of those reports, it's like, oh, I took this personality test. They're like, oh yeah, oh, this is so cool. Yeah, I like that about myself. And the people who get a report back and it's like strengths and weaknesses, they'll so often not want to take ownership over the weaknesses. They'll be like, yeah, I don't know if this report's accurate. And you're like, dude, it's literally like what you were saying, the words that are coming out of your mouth, the way you're acting is literally the demonstration of the weakness that's on the list. You need to start with acknowledging that reality, and then you can actually move forward. So if you have a couple, I'm kind of taking a roundabout way of answering this, sorry, where you're looking at, okay, you have these behaviorally ingrained patterns that you've been modeled throughout your life. Or there might also be a component of epigenetics that have developed. So, that nature and nurture debate. There's always a mix of that with the way that we behave and interact with people. But then it's the key thing is, are you willing to acknowledge the reality that you're at, take ownership of that, and be like, okay, I'm okay with how I am and I just want to stay in this place and live here and I'm good? Or you're like, no, I know that this can be better. And I want to always be in a growth state, because if you're not green and growing, you're ripe and rotting. Right? So if you genuinely want to be in a growth state in any aspect of your health, including this, what we're talking about, communication, relationship health, you have to then be like, okay, am I willing to grow? And that is going to be really tough if one partner is and one partner isn't. That's a whole other, we can get into that if we want, but let's just say both are, then that's huge. That's how you move forward. Both people having that like decision moment where they're like, we want to grow. If you're not wanting to grow, that's a huge reason for why you're dumping on each other, because you're in a fixed mindset, because you're in a victim mentality, even if you don't want to acknowledge it. So you come home and you dump on that other person because you feel like the world is out to get you all the time. Like, like nothing goes right for you or whatever it is. It's that victim mentality, and you're bringing it home to your spouse and you're dumping it on them, because most people feel more safe in their home. So it's a safe space for you to actually be honest with your feelings. And so now all of this just gets dumped out. And then now, if nothing is resolved and you've taken no steps to grow, then you're just going to live that cycle on repeat over and over and over again.
Yeah. And like, the amount of hardship that puts on a relationship, I can just imagine, like, I am not married yet, but I can imagine like there's going to be conflicts. And I'm like learning so much, by the way.
Oh, good.
I'm sitting here like, I should be taking notes here. Because I think that it's so valuable. And just like the point that you made about awareness of like, where are your faults? Because no one is perfect and no one's going to be perfect ever. And so if you can't realize that, or like kind of step down from your high horse and just be like, I'm okay with kind of sucking at some things just to start, I think that's the best thing that you can do in terms of a relationship and growing it forward, right? And just like growing together, because I feel like you're going to change over and over again, and you're with this person for the remainder of your life. So essentially, you guys are going to date different versions of yourselves, right? So if you
through the
give,
different stages.
yeah, exactly, and you give the other person space to grow on their own while you can kind of coexist in a loving way, I think that's the most ideal situation, right?
Yes, and allowing yourself to be different. So there's going to be some areas that you're going to acknowledge you have similarities. So for John and I, we are both like right out of the gates when we were dating, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're both so strong-willed. You're both like hot-tempered. Like we're both like highly passionate people," which can be great for love life, but can also be like we're going to like lose it on each other, right? So, I mean, if we're getting into a fight, it's like a hot tempered, like heated fight. Like we've had some bad fights, like ones that we were like, oh my gosh, is this the end of us? Right. So, like, get brutally honest about that.
Yeah.
And I am honest with people about that. If you want to see me on my worst day where I just seem like disheveled and like a hot mess, probably John and I have had a fight, because that's the thing that like will kind of tailspin me. Right. And so it's interesting because, first of all, acknowledge that you're like that your personality is hot tempered, because you can grow in this area, but not until you acknowledge it. I used to almost like want to deny it and be like, and almost like wishful thinking. I wish I was just a calmer person. I have friends who are so steady state. They're so mellow. I'm like, dude, that is not me. I can't be that person. But maybe it's the other way where you are that like mellow, calm, contemplative person. And most likely for me, I'm gonna verbalize it and blow up at you. And then we're gonna like hash it out and get over it and be done. And I'm not gonna hold a grudge. But if you're that person that's the opposite of that, you're gonna want to internalize it and be like, no, we never have conflict. We've never fought before. Guess what? You've internalized all your crap for so long. You become resentful, and you grow apart and the relationship ends.
Yep.
And you don't like you don't grow in it, and it doesn't work. It's
Yep.
just as bad in a different way, in a sense. I guess the thing that could be the extreme end of like a hot-tempered person, obviously, if it goes right more into that abuse category, that's not okay, obviously, because that could be like a feedback, right? Versus on the opposite end, when you're like kind of in that avoidance internalization, I'm just not going to talk to you. That can still be like an emotional type of trauma, because if you're just giving the person the silent treatment, that still feels awful,
Yep.
especially if it's days on end, right? So there's extremes of these situations that are very, very challenging. So I don't want to undermine that.
Yeah.
But if you're both in the growth mindset state, then you know that you can come back to these goals of like, no, we want to be a couple that is loving. We want to have like a home life that we love. We want to model our best behaviors to our kids. And that doesn't mean we're hiding our behaviors from them, by the way. Like, our kids have seen John and I get into heated debates and discussions. And then once they also see us resolve the conflict, and then we sit down as a family and we debrief it. We're
Yeah.
like, dude, guys, dad and I got way too intense right there. Here's what's going on. We're both stressed out because we're having these like financial issues in our business. Let's just say we've been through that. And so we're very honest with them. These are things that you have to go through in life, and they're hard, and you need to figure it out and you need to hash it out. And here's what we came to the conclusion of. Here's how it affects our home. Here's how it affects you guys. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So it's this real coming in with vulnerability in your leadership and real life. Because when you try to hide like any negative aspect of your relationship or your life from your kids, this is just kind of like a side note, that is not healthy either.
Yeah. Avoidance is not a healthy thing, right? If you
No.
avoid it, that means you're scared of it, and there's nothing, to be scared of. And just like you exposing your kids to it too, it's just kind of normalize it, and then they can get into the mindset of problem solving rather than even like internalizing it, like, oh no, I'm supposed to keep this to myself, I don't want to burden anyone with it, I'm just gonna hide it in here, and it's gonna resonate, and it's just gonna ruminate in there, and it's just gonna blow up in the end, which is just as bad as blowing up in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
And you want them to realize that they can be open about anything. Because if they like get attacked by someone at, walking home from school, and they're too scared to tell anyone because all they've been modeled is avoidance and
Mm-hmm.
internalization, that's the kid that grows up carrying this burden for years and years and years. When if you are that person, you are those parents that have communicated well with each other, communicated well with your kids, you can't prevent all bad things from happening in their life, but at least if they know that they are safe to communicate with you openly, because that's the environment and the culture you've made for your home. Same thing with your employees in a business.
Yep.
Like, we have created this environment in our clinic where our employees come to us with like life issues they're having, that we've been able to offer support and help, which affects them in their work environment as well, right? So you can take these principles into any aspect of your life, and they're extremely helpful.
Yep.
And it's interesting because like even little cues in communication can make such a big difference. When you think about, we talked a little bit about tone and pacing of speech. Even just speeding up or slowing down your speech can come across as condescending versus inviting. That's a huge shift. And then, are the words that you're using and the way you're saying it, does it sound like an attack or not?
Yeah.
Because if I come to you and I'm just like, Haley, why do you always show up late for our podcast?
Actually, that's you.
I know, that's why I said it. Dude, it was 9:01.
It's 9:01. Wait, what?
I turned on the podcast at 9:01.
Oh, right, our time difference. I'm like, it's 8:45.
Oh, yeah. It would have been 8:01 for you. That's why you always think I'm an hour late, because our time.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, the point is, if I say that like that to you, like, why do you always do this? It instantly, you feel like you're being attacked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I shift my question to like, hey, what's been going on lately? Genuine curiosity, open-ended question. I use the word what instead of why. Or I'd be like, hey, how you been feeling these days? Because I'm like, is there something wrong that you are like, this behavior is coming out, right?
Yeah.
Or I can say how I feel to you. I can be like, yeah, I feel like we haven't been on the same page as much with our topics for the podcast. Can we like set aside some time to go through like what topics do we want to review over the next couple weeks? Or I could say, it seems like, if I'm just like, Haley, I don't understand what your problem is. Right? You're just like,
Neither do
what?
I.
Why are you such a jerk to me? Instead of being like, it seems like you've been going through a lot of things lately. Like, how can I support you?
You can send me some money.
Right? Okay. So, but do you see how that sounds so different?
Yes.
Yeah. So like these are simple examples, and we're out of time for today, but I really think that just having the right tools and simple shifts can really make the biggest difference. Don't underestimate it.
100%.
Awesome. All right, you got any other golden nuggets before we say peace out?
No, I suggest all of these listeners go back and listen to this episode again with some note taking, because this can actually change your life. I'm not even kidding. So take notes.
Thank you.
And subscribe to our YouTube. Thank you.
Subscribe. Make sure you leave us a rating or review, drop a comment, and share this episode with a friend, like Haley already said. And in the meantime, be free, feel fresh, and live on fire.